Oh, hello, Ajahn. Um, I've found my samadhi is not very strong, but just sitting down, not in formal meditation, uh, just watching the Buddha, my mind stills. So I was thinking to make that maybe my samadhi practice, to have maybe a Buddha statue in front of me, and but I'd just like some guidance on that, please.
Yeah, that's actually very common practice, especially for newcomers to meditation. Something subtle like the breath, it's a very subtle sensation. People find it hard to stay with it at first or to even find it. Whereas something like a Buddha statue or an image that you're happy with, it's much easier maybe to focus your mind on that. That's probably why, or one of the reasons why people started making statues, because obviously in the time of the Buddha there were no statues. But not long after the Buddha passed away, people were missing him and thinking of him, and so they decided to start making statues. And so it's been a practice people have been doing for thousands of years, like focusing their mind, not even necessarily closing their eyes at first. They just look at the Buddha picture or statue. And it has a very calming effect usually if you're happy with the statue you see. So it's not like looking at a painting in an art gallery and sort of giving a critical appraisal. It's not that. You're just using it as a skillful means to focus your mind on something calm, still. Obviously a statue doesn't move. And what you might do as a next step is sometimes you close your eyes and see if you can remember that image, and then keep bringing the internal image up. So it's a mental activity of remembering the image and bringing it up and focusing on it in your mind's eye now. Doesn't work for everyone because some people's mind is not that visual or they just find it hard, but it's something to try. Another step might be to move from the image to reciting something that calms your mind, that reminds you of the Buddha. So it could literally be the word Buddha, or in Thailand we say Buddho, Buddho, which means the one who knows, or the knowing of the Buddha. But you could recite a word in English if you want that has some meaning to you. So, example, some people recite something like peace, peace, peace. Or it could be a phrase, some phrase, meaningful phrase, something to do with the Buddha or a teaching of the Buddha. So if you find after a while you can't visualize, or your mind is not wanting to remember an image of the Buddha, it just doesn't work that way, which does happen, you could try reciting a word or a phrase as another option. But in the beginning, just looking at a Buddha is a very common way people use just to calm down. Usually you feel good. It's hard to get angry or upset just looking at a Buddha statue. So a lot of emotions we might have picked up in our day, stuff floating around the mind, often it helps you to settle down by looking at the image. And if you're doing that as a concentration exercise, well, after a while you feel more calm. You may move on to something else, either a slightly different object, or even contemplate, practice vipassana, having looked at the image to calm down and contemplate the impermanent nature of your thoughts and feelings coming up. Over time you can experiment with this, see what happens.
Thank you.
Sadhu Lumpur. We have another raised hand. You may ask your question.
Good evening, Lumpur. I'm calling from Sussex, West Sussex.
Oh.
And I wanted to ask you about obsessive thinking, related to something very, very challenging life experience. And it's interesting, if I go to Chithurst, if I'm even out of the house, or if I go, it's so much easier. You're out, in a monastic situation. My mind is so much happier and easier. But it's kind of related to a family member. I found she's my aunt. She was like a mother figure, and I found someone to look after her. And within about a month, she changed her entire will. And this person, my aunt didn't have any children, doesn't have any children, but she was like a mother to me. And so it's something that's kind of, I think it's in the morning, I wake up and this kind of negative feelings in my mind, obsessive thinking about this negative experience. And I just wanted to, I think it's just having a tool in the morning, a meditative tool to help with the mind. I mean, obviously, I kind of do everything I can, in everything I can to help, but listen to Dhamma. But it's that kind of morning when you wake up and you go, oh dear, my mind is like attached to something negative. And I wanted if there was something you could advise to help with this at this point of time.
It sounds like you know what the problem is, which is a good start. In essence, a thought is just a small moment, a small, a concept, an idea that comes up, and often it's strung together with many memories and different issues. But that's all it is. It's just different thoughts, concepts arising, passing away. So a regular mindfulness practice in the morning is a very good time to do it because you've already rested, you haven't started your day yet. So a regular meditation, mindfulness meditation in the morning is a good thing. And just try to relax. Don't try to fight the obsession because that often makes it harder and you feel defeated by your own obsessive thoughts. So maybe don't try and fight it, but just try to understand what is going on by paying more attention, by bringing up the mindfulness. So if you can develop an object, whether it's the breath or any other object, sounds like you might need to develop some loving kindness, metta meditation, as a regular thing. So the thought, may I be well, may my auntie be well, may all the beings and the people I know be well. Every day bringing up that thought and doing it in a concentrated way for at least 5 or 10 minutes and cultivating a feeling at the same time is a really good way to start the day, introducing this positive thought. Of course, the obsessive thoughts will crowd back in, and sometimes very strongly, but sometimes not so strongly. Sometimes the metta may become established. You might have a little bit of a success with that, and you can say, oh, today I actually can have a good feeling for myself, everyone I know, even the people I don't like or I'm annoyed with, I can still wish them well. So those days kind of remind you what you can do. And then there'll be other days where whatever happens, you're just obsessed with these problems, the sort of things you talked about. So you have to be very patient on those days, but still have this goal. I've got to get to the point where I can still wish myself well, my auntie, her carer, everyone else I know in my world, my sphere of friends, relatives, wish them all well. And you keep that goal in mind. But if the obsessive thoughts are really strong and overwhelming, you have to just remind yourself, just be patient, this will change. Because I guarantee whatever is obsessing your mind won't be there all day long. There'll be periods where it comes up strongly, and then other periods where you do forget. And like you say, sometimes it's helpful to go to places that help you to calm down quicker. So monasteries, go for a walk. West Sussex, very beautiful part of the world, just go for a walk. Do things that help you to relax. And remind yourself, this will pass, this is not permanent. And what's not permanent is not really you. It's not, we say, I am obsessed about this issue, but really there's a collection of different desires and attachments that have come up, and obviously your mind is latching onto them, but they're not a person or a being. They're different concepts, ideas that are separate from your mind, but it's just you haven't noticed or seen the separation very clearly. So you have to keep working on the mindfulness, and it's one of the benefits of mindfulness. As you become more aware, you physically settle down, mentally you settle down a bit, you can see a separation between yourself and the issue or the thought that you're obsessed with. Then your whole attitude, your relationship to it starts to change, because you realize it's just a thought, it's just a bit of suffering that I've created and I'm holding on to. But now, once you can see the separation, you say, this is something to be let go of. I don't need to keep giving importance to this. It's too painful. It's not helpful. It's not improving anything here. So I might as well start to let go. And that letting go may take time, but if you keep applying the mindfulness and looking at what's going on, there's every chance for you to do that, to let go. Maybe you set yourself a task, you just say, however long it takes, I'm going to learn to be at peace with this issue that I'm obsessed with, that I'm very upset with. I'm going to learn to be at peace with it until finally I can just accept it and let it go. You set that goal and just keep working towards that every day until it's done.
Sadhu Lumpur. We have another raised hand. You may ask your question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lumpur, just calling in from London. So good to see you and everyone. My question, well, I guess two things. I guess there's something about being very much in the head. So I think I have tried the Buddha, but breathing in on But, breathing out on Dot, to try to get into out of my head. And I guess we talked a lot about thoughts, but what about when there's lots of big emotions come up? And I think for people that maybe have survived CPTSD or complex trauma, sort of when really big emotions come up, you don't quite know why they're there, come out lump. I don't know if Buddha talked about trauma back in the day. I don't know if that's a modern term, but yeah, sort of my question is around what if during the day sort of really sort of strong emotions come up and they're not quite sure what's going on, and trying to sometimes, what are skillful ways to deal with that? Yeah.
Well, I would try and develop a meditation object that you find that maybe has worked for you before, that you find you're willing to trust and use, even if you're not successful every time or every day, but a meditation object that you're willing to work with and develop. So, for example, the breath. Something that you can turn to, particularly when strong emotions or strong feelings come up, whether they're centered in your body or it's just a lot of mental proliferation. Like you just mentioned that, there's times when you feel, what do I do? Or you're not sure what to do. That's what you have to do. It's just gently turn back to that object. And that could be just for 1 minute in the middle of a busy day. It doesn't have to be in a temple or in your quiet space doing a meditation. It could be sitting in a car or a train. Could be sitting in a chair in a workplace, but just for 1 minute. Just come back to something that helps you to be a bit more mindful, more peaceful. So I'd suggest the breath, but it doesn't have to be the breath. There's a few other different objects you could try. And what you find, if you have an object that you return to regularly, it's a bit like a friend. It's something you can turn to when you're panicking or when you're confused or when you're fed up. You come back to the friend, meaning you come back to the breath. It brings up a certain feeling of calm. Even if it's only a tiny bit of calm, it's better than nothing. And a tiny bit of calm, when continued, becomes more significant, something more complete, more full. And once you're a little bit better at turning your attention to the breath, even if you do have a lot of accumulated unpleasant feelings, memories, emotions that come up often, you've got something now that you can turn to just to help calm down so you get a better perspective on it. If you just sit there trying to analyze it, why do I feel like this? This shouldn't be happening, blah, blah, blah. it may help, but probably it won't help that much. But if you have some meditation method that you've used and you've found that has worked sometimes at least, turn to that first. Bring the mind back to the present moment, to how you are in the present moment, and just using the breath as a way to steady the mind, keep mindful at that time, if only for a few moments. It will give you this ability just to look at what's going on, if it is PTSD or any kind of accumulated stress over some past incidents, your memories and flashbacks and stuff. If that's going on, now you've got something you can turn to just to calm yourself and then get some insight onto it. And even the worst PTSD is still feelings, sometimes intense feelings, all kinds of stuff, extreme stuff maybe in the mind, but it's all impermanent. It all comes and goes. You have periods when you feel worse and then it fades. With the mindfulness and then some wise reflection, you can look at that and you're starting to change your perspective on it and say, this is not permanent. What is not permanent is not really me, it's just something that's happened. It's a phenomena that's been triggered from the past. It comes up, it's there, it goes. And you're starting to see that because you're more mindful. Then I think you'll find everything will start changing for the better. At the moment, that's all I can suggest. Try it out. But the breath I've found is a very good friend, very calming, very reliable, although it is subtle, so yes, sometimes it's hard to find, but it's a very reliable kind of friend for any kind of suffering.
Sadhu Lumpur. We have another raised hand. You may ask your question.
Yes. Lumpur, I'm joining from India.
Hello.
Hello. So Lumpur, for the last 3-4 years, I have been getting these very strange dreams about snakes and, very dangerous in some sense, snakes of various shapes and forms harming me. And over years, these images have just gotten stronger. I do try to dissociate myself with that. Once I wake up, there's a sense of like a lot of sensation around fear when I wake up. I do try to kind of separate myself from that, but still it's very, very strong. And sometimes, if I wake up, I would even see like the curtains and all as if they've got snake scales. I've not had any particular incident related to snakes in this life, as far as my memory goes. So this is very strange for me and would appreciate your guidance.
Well, the good news is you're still here. Obviously, the snakes didn't get you. They didn't bite you and kill you or, damage you. It's just dreams. It's just memories or dreams. So that's the good news. It's temporary. It's not ultimately a threat to you. But maybe it is some old karma. Sometimes it's our own mind warning us about something. Like some people are a bit like snakes, when the time comes they bite you, like a cobra or whatever, they go for you. Or some people are a bit more like pythons and they wrap around you and kind of want to control you and keep you tight. Sometimes it's just symbolism of the mind, and it could be associated with work or your social circle, people you meet, and it's just your mind telling you, beware, there's a bit of a snake around. It could be that. Or it could be like past memories, even from past lives. It can be that you've built up a phobia or had some problems, some suffering with snakes or snake-like experiences in previous lives, and it's still giving its result this life. So that may have to come through a little bit of meditation, learning to develop mindfulness, and then just reflecting on what you think these dreams may mean. If you can't find any symbolism or real meaning, don't worry, it's just a temporary phenomenon. It's just an image or a set of images, and there may be accompanying emotions, but you wake up, it all disappears. That's what you know, it's impermanent. It's anicca, we say. It's every dream, however special or vivid or however insightful it seems, in the end it's just another sankhara, we say, a condition of mind that arises, passes away. That much you know for sure. So you can trust in that reflection. It's just an image, it's just a feeling that you remember as you're waking up. And you notice as you go through your day, most of the dreams and the images, however intense they were, something was trying to kill you or something, well, they all disappear, don't they? You can hardly remember any details after a while. You may have a vague memory that you had a dream about a snake or something, but generally the details fade very quickly, because that's all they are. They're just images and partly memories, partly just your mental proliferation. So use that to your advantage. Oh, it's just impermanent. Not to be clung to because it's impermanent, not to take it too personally or give too much importance to it because it's impermanent. Reflect on the impermanence of it. But if ever it seems to be relating to some incident in your life, and sometimes dreams are like that, especially for people who follow a spiritual path, meditate, practice Dhamma, practice dana, generosity. People do sometimes have dreams that seem significant or meaningful. And that's an exercise in your wisdom faculty. Over time, as you become more peaceful and also more insightful, you may notice that the dream is referring to some, as I was saying earlier, maybe there's some person in your life that is displaying certain qualities like a snake, after you. Maybe just, the anger of an angry snake. There's someone after you wanting to hurt you. Maybe there is someone competing with you in your social group or at work or something like that. So sometimes a dream can be a warning. Occasionally, but I'm not sure it would be in your case, but occasionally snakes can actually be auspicious. And the Buddha referred to an enlightened being occasionally as a naga. A naga, as you probably know, is like a snake god. It's just a sign of a great being. So an enlightened being is a great being. It's someone totally free from all their suffering and attachment. So occasionally, a snake can be a good thing. It's a sign of something auspicious, something good happening, or meeting a good person. It's possible. So you have to be the one who would work that out from the dream you have. But if it's not clear, don't worry, just let it go. It's just an impermanent thing, and we all have dreams, and some dreams are very crazy or unbelievable, and you just have to accept that. Does that help?
It does. It does. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. When the Achans or Sayadaws who stay and practice in the forest, they are bound to be infected by malaria or dengue, which causes body pain, high fever, other unpleasant sensation. How do they overcome such situations? Do their meditation progress decline?
Well, I think over the centuries, every scenario has happened. Sometimes they die, unfortunately. The first year I was a monk, the monk who sat next to me died of cerebral malaria. Very unfortunate. I had another close friend about 30 years ago. He was dying of dengue fever because no one had identified it. He was stuck in his hut in the forest with the fever, with the dengue fever, and only at the last minute everyone realized it wasn't just some other minor fever, because you get a lot of fevers when you're in the jungles, in the tropics. But everyone at the last minute realized dengue fever and got him to a hospital, and they said if he had left it another day, he would probably die. But they managed to treat it at the last minute. He survived, thankfully. So dengue fever, people, yogis in the forest, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen have died from malaria and dengue fever, but also what we tend to remember and talk about is when they don't die and when they use the Dhamma because they have no choice, which is less common these days. These days medical care is much more prevalent. Even in the jungle in Thailand, usually you can get to a hospital or clinic fairly easily, and other countries the same. But still occasionally there's this problem. But generally nowadays you can get treatments, whereas in the old days often you couldn't. You couldn't get to a doctor. Treatment, transport, communication was non-existent. So monks often had to rely on their own Dhamma practice. And so as we know, like Lumpur Cha and many other teachers maybe had to face dengue fever or malaria without any modern medicines. Occasionally they had some very simple herbal medicines, and then they had a lot of endurance and they had a lot of Dhamma. So if you read Ajahn Chah's biography, he would sit, he got malaria and he reached a point where he actually sat up and said, I'm going to meditate through this. And he did. He got through it. And all the monks I know, because I've lived with forest monks, they catch malaria. They may have medication to help them through it and cure them, luckily, but they still tend to meditate through it. So whether they can sit up, maybe not for that long because you're just so weak, but you can sit up through it, or even lying down, you can still meditate. And I've seen very kind of heroic monks meditate. They still have medication to help, but even with medication, often the medication for malaria is as bad as the disease. It gives you a lot of side effects, like you can't sleep, your head is spinning, headaches, vomiting, and so on. So they've had medication, but they still meditate very bravely through it and stay very calm. And it's often very inspiring to see a monk meditating through an illness, a serious illness, not complaining, not moaning and groaning and running around, and not seeking all kinds of distractions, but just being very mindful, calm, peaceful through their illness. And hopefully they recover, and quite often nowadays they do recover. Occasionally they die, but to see a monk die mindfully is also inspiring. It's sad, and if there's nothing you can do about it, well, you have to accept it. But when a monk dies with mindfulness, restraint, a sense of peace, dignity, it's very inspiring, although, of course, very sad. So yes, some yogis and meditators have to use the Dhamma, the power of Dhamma, through their illness, and hopefully it works. But nowadays, go and get some medicine as well.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Ajahn, thank you for the Dhamma talk. Today you reminded us to let go of the thoughts by seeing their impermanence. In my practice, I notice that I usually get caught by the content of the thoughts, which describe painful experience that did actually happen. Could you please explain how to let go of these thoughts whose content is convincing as it describes painful experiences or traumas? How to train the mind to accept that cruelty, violence, and lack of compassion are common behavior among many people? Thank you.
Well, obviously, if you've had traumatic experience, it is something you're going to have to learn to deal with. It's unfortunate, but you have to ask yourself, constantly reliving it, going into, say, blame, guilt, anguish over it, is that helping? Sometimes you have to sit down and think it through or talk to yourself, even though you can't let go yet and you're not peaceful with your memories and different kinds of trauma and stuff that comes up. But at least talk to yourself through it and get the right understanding that something in the past you can't change, you can't go back and change it, but you can change the way you relate to the memories and feelings that are triggered when those memories come up. You can change your relationship. So your aim is to get to see these 5 khandhas, body, feelings, memories, thoughts, and sense consciousness, as just that, just 5 khandhas that arise, pass away. To have enough mindfulness and insight to see them as impermanent, as not self, not to identify them as you, as self, as me, mine, myself. I know this is easy to say, but this is what you're aiming for, and you've got to get it right first. What are you aiming for? And then you practice. And the idea is to keep re-establishing mindfulness as much as it takes, as long as these memories, feelings, images, however traumatic, however overwhelming they are, as long as they're coming up, then you've got mindfulness to practice. You need to practice. But your aim is to get to the point where you can recognize a feeling as a feeling, however intense, however unpleasant, painful, whatever. It's a feeling that arises and ceasing, and mindfulness is giving you the tool. Then you can reflect to see it is something that arises, ceases. It's not, ultimately, it's not me. It's a phenomena, experience, a mental state that has a beginning, has an end. And as you practice mindfulness, there'll be periods when those feelings and that trauma is not coming up, and you can say, see, it's gone. Then maybe later it comes back, but then you can do the same thing again. And you can keep seeing memories and feelings as impermanent, and what's impermanent is not self. And more the mindfulness and that wisdom, that understanding becomes clear to you, less and less the overwhelming nature of trauma and emotions. The less importance you give to that, the less you attach to that, the more you see it as just memories, stuff being triggered but arising, ceasing. And if it's going well, and I know everyone's different, so some people might have more to deal with than others, but if it's going well, gradually you're seeing it's just a memory, it's just a feeling. It arises, it ceases, and little by little it'll get less and less, it'll affect you less. And there are those people who have managed to overcome all kinds of trauma through the practice of mindfulness, developing insight, developing other skillful attitudes and skillful activities in their life as well. It's a whole array of things, but it's possible to come to terms with trauma and get a good attitude and learn to let go of it. You just have to be very patient and use the right Dhamma medicine to deal with it, and obviously get help as well with good advice and guidance and whatever. But the Dhamma, when applied, can help. Yeah, it can.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur, I'm currently a vegetarian, but due to recent health reasons, my doctors have advised me to consume some meat. I feel uncomfortable doing so as I do not wish to contribute to the animal industry, even though I understand that the Buddha did not mandate vegetarianism. I would be grateful for Lumpur's advice on this. Am I becoming too attached to my point of view? Thank you.
Well, attachment always leads to suffering. So the question is, are you suffering with your point of view? Is it leading to problems? I also received that same advice many years ago when my skin turned yellow and I had uncontrollable itching all over my skin, so I couldn't sleep at night. And then they tested my blood and said my blood was no good. They said, you've got to start eating meat. But I didn't, and I survived. I guess it was a difficult time, but I managed to come out of that all right, and I'm still vegetarian today, and I didn't start eating meat. But if you have to and you're following your doctor's advice and you're happy to do that, that's okay. It's not evil to eat meat, and maybe it can help you if you have a particular health issue. So it's really up to you. I would try and deal with also feelings and, like you say, points of your view and your emotions around the issue, to try not to create suffering over it. So If you can find alternative sources of protein and whatever, fine, good. If you can't, or it's too difficult, or you want to follow your doctor's advice, fine, good. But don't make a problem or create suffering out of this thing. In the end, you're just eating, trying to eat the best diet you can to keep your body healthy so you can practice the Dhamma. So even vegetarianism isn't an end in itself. I think most people, or many people with knowledge, particularly knowledge, like you say, of the cruelty of the animal industry, the waste, many people say, eating vegetarian is good. It's a good contribution to the world. But it's not an absolute impediment to nibbana to eat meat. If you're not killing and you're not harboring anger and intention to kill, you're not necessarily blocking the way to nibbana. And some enlightened monks have been meat eaters. The Buddha didn't say you have to be vegetarian, but it's a good thing if you can do it. So just see what your body will allow and what your situation can allow, what you can cope with, and try not to create suffering out of it. And like you say, examine your points of view, your attachments to your views. Because sometimes we attach to a really good view. It could even be like, I think Buddha is best. And probably everyone watching this, or most people, will think Buddha is best, the wisest, the most compassionate. If someone comes along and says Buddha is not best, you maybe have to accept that. You attach to your view, but you don't attach so much that you get angry with the person who say Buddha is not best. We have to learn how to have a wise, skillful relationship to beliefs, views, and so on, so that we're not creating suffering. And even very good views, when attached to, can still become painful. So you have to investigate that. Views are not self. Views are impermanent. Views are not self.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Greetings, Ajahn. Although I keep my sitting practice daily for a few years already, but only manage to do short periods daily, I don't feel I enjoy sitting for a longer period of time each session, and I don't know how to encourage myself to have this virya. Can Ajahn please advise? Thank you.
Well, if you can keep up the short periods of meditation, that's a good start. 10 minutes a day is better than nothing. So if you can do that, just keep that going. But also maybe look at other wholesome Dhamma inputs in your life. So practice of dana, charity, generosity, in different ways, voluntary work, donations, so on. Precepts, 5 precepts, try to make that the center of your daily life. And that will bring up a lot of effort and mindfulness and understanding. Listen to the Dhamma regularly, and from that associate with Dhamma practitioners, Kalyana Mitta. So if you have the opportunity to attend particularly monasteries where there's Sangha who practice the Vinaya, practice well, you get a good boost and support to your practice. Both the activities you're involved with will tend to bring out good qualities in you, but also associating with other people in good places will help. So there's many things you can do to help you get through, and if you can't meditate for many hours yet, don't worry. Just keep a basic meditation going for now, and maybe later you'll be able to do more. So I'd say minimum 10 minutes a day. Just learning to sit still, developing a meditation object will be very helpful. And then these other activities, they'll help.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. For some weeks now, I have been waking at 3 a.m. and listening to past YouTube metta videos as a start, followed by meditation on breath videos for about 2 to 3 hours. Is this good practice, or am I being lazy? Thank you, Lumpur Kalyano. Should I just be sitting in meditation without those guiding voices?
I'd see what's working. So if at this time you find this helpful, keep doing it. If it's working, if it's supporting you to put effort into your practice, helping you to meditate, if you can sit there listening to a Dhamma talk and sit still and sit up longer and do that regularly, well, why not? However, in the back of your mind, you kind of keep that doorway open for the fact that one day you probably have to learn how to meditate without listening to a Dhamma talk or without listening to the guidance. So that's like your sort of long-term goal. And when you feel ready, maybe you take that step and you say, today I'm going to sit and meditate for my usual length of time, but without any audio or visual aids. I'll just rely on myself, my own effort, my own Dhamma teaching you. As Ajahn Chah used to say, teach yourself rather than listening to someone else. So I'd keep that as a goal, but when you're ready for that, just see. And if you try on your own and sitting in silence, sitting quietly, and it doesn't work and you're not being able to put forth effort, okay, go back to listening to Dhamma. Maybe, that's one of the benefits of all the tech, the internet, and the different sources we have now for Dhamma. We can do that. When I started meditating, it wasn't possible to listen to YouTube or all these other things. So you had to try a bit harder yourself because you can't read a book. Although some people would, they read a book and they kind of guided meditation manual, they got it in front of them. You're like, you're not going to get very peaceful reading a book as you meditate. Nevertheless, people would do it. But now you can put the headphones on and listen. So, okay, if it helps, do it. But try, when you're ready, try without as well and see what it's like, just being silent on your own for periods of time. And that will help you as well.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur, while observing the 4 elements of the body, I discovered that in addition to the elements, there is a life force in the body. The body is not just a collection of elements, it is also alive. Is that the consciousness that makes the body alive? Please give me some advice how to observe elements of the body. Thank you.
Yeah, the good news is that consciousness is the 5th element. So the Buddha did talk about it as a dhatu, an element. And the 6th element is space, agasa dhatu. So we actually have 6 elements. And often, for ease of discussion, we often just say body and mind, or physical form and mentality. Mentality is that which knows, and that's broken down to its sort of different aspects, different activities, so like feeling, memory, thought formations, sense consciousness. But in essence, it's the quality that just knows, can be aware. The body is the physical element that doesn't know anything, comes from these inanimate elements, physical elements of the world. But coming together, we get a human being. You got body and consciousness together. So the Buddha, I think, generally encourages us to start with the body because it's just easier to know or more obvious to us. So that's why you run through the body, 32 parts of the body, 4 elements. Earth element, you divide it into the solid part, liquid part, air part, temperature part, 4 elements. And many people find it a very productive, useful reflection. These elements that make up the body, I call them mine, my body. This, you automatically identify with them as a self, as yours. But they come from these elements of nature that are not yours. They're just physical elements that have no owner, not self. And when you reflect on or contemplate the elements, the physical elements, that often is, people have a lot of breakthroughs and insight from that because they realize, human beings whoever they are, whatever they are, in the end they're just a collection of 4 elements plus the mind, plus consciousness. So the consciousness is also an element. It's just a bit trickier because it's fast and it changes. And so you have one thought and another thought and then one feeling and another feeling. And it's all over the place, especially the untrained mind. And that's why we meditate and practice mindfulness, to give us some skill and stability of mind to start reflecting on the mind itself, to know the mind in the mind or as the mind. And that's a little bit more tricky, but it's still doable. And that's what we have to do. I mean, so sometimes you can just, at least briefly, reflect on the mind or consciousness as an element. You know, the famous teaching is, see the seeing as just seeing, the hearing as just hearing. And just try it. The problem is your mind is usually not quiet enough to do it for very long, and we'll get caught into another train of thought. But just try it for a few moments, just seeing, just hearing. And what do you notice? That one, you might notice a bit of space between hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching. There's a sense of its moments of sense consciousness arising and ceasing. That's one thing that helps to kind of break up, separate the sense of self and ownership. And then other things, the uncontrollability of it, the conditioned nature of it, one thing leads to another. There's a whole range of reflections you can start introducing to understand better consciousness as an element, you could say as part of nature, rather than me, mine, myself, my mind, my problems, my suffering. That's going the other way, the way of attachment and delusion. So it takes time, but this is what we're doing, to use a modern phrase, unpacking the 5 khandhas, pulling them apart, unpacking them so you can see them or know them as individual elements rather than as this solid sort of idea of me, mine, myself. It's a big topic, but that's a little insight into it.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Ajahn, I have heard that when someone has a lot of accumulated merits, the mind is able to handle adversity without too much suffering. I assume that this is due to merits that leave a pleasant feeling in the mind and that balanced out the negative feeling due to external object. If you can kindly explain, please. Thank you.
Correct. Merit and meritorious mental states bring with them pleasant feelings, which helps. They cushion the effect, even if you're experiencing a lot of pain, physical pain, mental pain from the past or from experiences going on around you. It cushions it. It gives you some feeling of well-being, stability of mind that helps you to contemplate. But that's the other important thing. The wisdom, the understanding will help you to deal with and be with unpleasant experiences and treat them correctly so that you don't take them as self and continue to suffer with them, but you just know an unpleasant, painful feeling as just a painful feeling. An external unpleasant object as just an unpleasant object. When you have mindfulness and wisdom, as well as other forms of merit helping as well, but when you have mindfulness and wisdom, there's enough of the good qualities of mind to see or know that. So you don't necessarily have to suffer with a painful condition in your body or someone being aggressive or rude to you or some unpleasant experience going on that's happened that you can't do anything about. You can be with that if you have to be, but you can keep your mind still in a wholesome state. It doesn't mean to say you don't know the pain of what you're experiencing, but you have enough wholesome qualities that bring you some pleasant feeling and goodness of mind to deal with it well. So it's like the arahant who meets the unpleasant yaka. Yaka is like an ogre, a giant, who's like really angry and really kind of a coarse kind of figure. So the arahant can meet the yaka and talk to the yaka and teach the Dhamma to the yaka, but at the same time he doesn't want to get too close because the yaka is like just an unpleasant character. So the arahant teaching the Dhamma to the yaka, the giant, takes a step back and the yaka says, you're scared of me, aren't you? You're revolted by me, meaning you're caught up, you're reacting with aversion to me. And the arahant said, no, I'm still perfectly peaceful and happy inside my mind, but you're just such a coarse character, so I step back. Life is like that, the arahant still experiences pain and unpleasant things, and they know when the unpleasant things are happening. It's not like they're in some kind of different world in that sense, but they also have a peace of mind and pleasant feelings that they can use to cushion the effect of the unpleasant world around them or the unpleasant feelings of their body.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. In my society, we have a way of doing good deeds, and that is to donate coffins for poor families when they are unable to pay for the funeral themselves. However, some monks from the Tibetan tradition told me that to help the Sangha is the best compared to helping the laity, because you don't know if the lay people you help are moral people or not. Ajahn, could you say something about this?
Well, it's very difficult to generalize, isn't it? I mean, it depends what the situation is. You may be somewhere where there's a need for a coffin and there's no Sangha around to make donation to or help, but the person who needs, the family who needs a coffin is right there. So you might help them if you're in a position to help. I think it's hard to generalize. Of course, in the way we understand dana, supporting Sangha dana is considered the highest or the most fruitful kind of dana. But it's a very general term. How that is done and how it's performed in what way. There's a lot of room for different things to be done there, or different activities, different aspects of it to come in. So, to be honest, in Thailand, it's not Tibet, but Thailand, Buddhist country, is really not uncommon for monks who are offered funds and support, material support, to then take that material support and help poor families get a coffin for a funeral. So it could be the indirect way. That's the one value of Sanghadana. Quite often, if they're good monks, keeping Vinaya with wisdom and a genuine pure heart or good intention, often they have very good ideas and good understanding and good standing in the community to help the community in good ways. So traditionally, say a country like Thailand and many of the other Buddhist countries, people offer to monks, but often the monks are doing a lot of social work and good things for the community. It's just they become the conduit because, like you say, sometimes you offer directly to a layperson and rather than the money going to the real need, it goes somewhere else, what we might call corruption or misappropriation. So, you offer the funds for the coffin and they end up buying alcohol for the wake, which is not uncommon. But you offer the money to the monks and the monks are trustworthy enough and wise enough to buy the coffin rather than alcohol for the wake. So this kind of thing happens. And so, endless good stories, inspiring stories of Sangha. I know of being offered funds and building hospitals, clinics, funding funerals when needed, or currently in Thailand and Sri Lanka and other places, funding flood relief. When there's a flood, suddenly there's all these monasteries raising funds, sending food, sending help very quickly. There'll be government agencies doing it, but everyone knows in these places government agencies are often a bit slow. you give some donation to the government, it'll be next year before it's released and the food arrives, and they need the food today, now, need it yesterday. So often monasteries are very practical, sanghas are very practical. They see they have connections, they see who can do it, how to do it, get it done quick, get the help there quick. They're quite good at that in many places. And that's a sign of why often we support Sangha, and Sangha are considered a good conduit for dana and for helping the world. But it's not the only way. If you're with someone and they need a coffin, buy them a coffin. If you've got the money, why not? Or make them a coffin, why not? So I think it also depends on time and place and just what the situation requires.
Sadhu. Lompo? The next question. Did the rich in the Buddha's time gather wealth in a way that harmed everyday citizens?
Of course, just as it happens today. But we tend not to remember that so well, do we? We don't like to talk so much about corruption and people taking advantage of the citizens and gathering wealth and being cruel and unkind. Occasionally you hear the story about the cruel king or the cruel guy who did this and that. There'll be some Dhamma teaching or Dhamma reflection in it, but generally we don't want to remember that stuff because it's not very inspiring, is it? So we talk more about the inspired wealthy merchant who offered the land to build a monastery, or who helped lots of poor people, sick people, or supported the Sangha for many years. You hear those stories more. And in the Buddhist texts, whether it's the suttas have a little bit, or also the commentaries, you hear about the inspiring stuff a bit more. But occasionally there'll be the story about the bad guy, because you can learn from bad guys as well, what not to do, and maybe the karma consequences of being a bad guy, and then how it comes back on you. And whether it's in the time of the Buddha or today, it's still happening today. There are plenty of people who have taken the wealth of their country or their citizens, misused it, been very selfish, and then it's caught up with them. And even in this very life, sometimes people fall down, don't they? And sometimes it's next life, and that one's hard to prove, but sometimes in this life you see it as well. I don't need to tell you, you just turn the news on and you'll find out all about it.
Sadhu Lompo. Sorry, there was a second part to that question. Today, the ultra-rich seem to be manipulating the world and the media so that ordinary citizens cannot afford a home to live, etc., and getting many to blame refugees and immigrants to be the source of their plight instead of looking at addressing wealth inequality. Politicians seem either not to be brave enough to deal with the ultra-rich or to be the proponents of the ultra-rich. And some of the ultra-rich may be keeping wars going to get even richer from the arms and the reconstruction industries. A layperson constantly checking the news isn't probably so helpful. Any guidance, Lompo, on how to help the world and oneself?
Well, you seem to understand the problem. Watch a little bit of the news just to check what's going on if you need to, but like you keep going into the details of the stuff, it's very depressing, and you often have this helplessness. Who can teach or do anything about the ultra-rich and corporations and all, and politicians and governments that are doing all kinds of things, some good, some not so good. So I just keep your wits about you, reflect on things, but I would put more effort into your Dhamma practice, because when you die, it's the Dhamma that you've developed in your life that you take with you. That's going to be your real refuge. Sila, Samadhi, Panya is your real wealth, your real refuge. All this other stuff, you can influence the world in whatever way you can, is fine. And there's good in many people, so some of the ultra-rich have many good qualities and do some good things, but some of them don't. We don't have time to, investigate it or work it all out, and that's probably why people keep taking advantage of their fellow human beings, is because no one has the time to sort it all out. we hope the governments will do something, but some do better than others, and some periods of time they do better than others. But how much time have you got for all this? I don't feel I have a lot of time. I got to meditate and free my mind from suffering, because that's actually the most useful thing for everyone else as well. Anyone who can reduce the amount of greed, anger and delusion in their mind, in the world, is helping the world. And that doesn't mean to say we can't help the world on the outside as well, materially and with knowledge and skills in all kinds of ways. Of course we can, but the job that people are doing least, but is the most valuable, is purifying. Each person has to purify their heart from greed, anger and delusion. That's the most useful thing. If you meet an arahant, that's mind-blowing, life-changing for many people, for the world. And so, the more arahants and the more wise, compassionate people we have in the world, the better. If you're going to work on, sorting out the problems with governments, politicians, the ultra-rich, okay, it's a noble cause, but don't be surprised if you kind of go for many years and only chip away a little bit at it, and it can be a little bit frustrating and disappointing as well. So you do what you can, but if you can practice the Dhamma, you'll do something really sure, that you can be really sure is something good, because you'll know the results, and the people around you will also know the results. That would be my advice.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. Dear Ajahn, I have heard the term about impure donor, but then if the recipient is pure, then the offering could be purified. However, what defines the donor as impure? Does it mean the offering wasn't gained in a moral way?
Yes, quite probably true, yes. If someone goes out and robs, steals a lot of money in some way, or procures wealth in some unskillful, unwholesome, harmful, aggressive, cruel, selfish way, and then gives it to a good cause, there's still some dana, some good karma, some merit made, but we tend to say that wealth is a bit hot because it's been derived in an immoral way. It's not necessarily going to lead to good things. It's hard to put this in words. I think this is beyond words, but just generally you probably get the principle. Like, if someone is stealing over here, even though they may help out over here, tends to be, the whole set of conditions is not right for that merit, that dana, that generosity or charity to become fruitful in a good way. I mean, at the very least, maybe it's you give stolen goods to a monk, the monk gets arrested for handling stolen goods. That's not good. Or the monk gets threatened because they've received stolen goods or something that's been gained in an immoral way, and someone comes chasing up and why have you got this? It can happen. It can stimulate the monk's greed as well. So it could be a nun, could be anyone. I'm just saying monk because I'm a monk, but it could be anyone. Say you give something that's been gained in an immoral way to, it could stimulate the greed of the person, and they say, I want that. But then it's immoral, so you're sort of dragging that person down as well as what you've done in the first place, which is immoral. So it's not what the Buddha encouraged. The Buddha said, practice what we call right livelihood, earn your living in an honest way, making good karma, practicing right speech, right action, not harming or taking advantage of others. And then the kind of dana, charity, generosity you practice, do it in an appropriate way, offer things that are useful, appropriate, skillful things. So, don't give alcohol to monks, or don't go and give guns to somebody or whatever, Try to do your dana with properly earned wealth, and the things you give are useful and you've thought about it. And then the ones you're giving to are going to use it wisely because they're good, wise people. That's the general guideline. The actual details, well, you have to work it out on the day, don't you? It's hard to say exactly, but that's the general principle of dana that leads to good things. You're practicing dana for nibbana. So if you're earning your living in an impure, harmful way, that's already going wrong from the first step, isn't it? And even if you practice dana, you've still got to fix whatever the problem is that led you to attain this wealth in an impure way. That needs to be fixed or addressed if you're going to get to nibbana at the end of the line.